It's shaping up to be a big weekend in the race for the Republican presidential nomination. Texas Governor Rick Perry is expected to officially enter the race in South Carolina this Saturday. Meanwhile, most of the other GOP candidates will be in Iowa for the straw poll. Last night, they faced off in a debate in the Hawkeye State, each of them giving their plan for turning the economy around.
We can start to see recovery within 3 months, not the whole recovery, but we can begin to see it if we put into place what we know to be true. Number one, we should not have increased the debt ceiling. In the last 2 months, I was leading on the issue of not increasing the debt ceiling. That turned out to be the right answer.
And that what President Obama has done is the exact opposite of what the economy needed to be done. Almost every action he took made it harder for entrepreneurs to build businesses, for banks to make loans, for businesses to hire and to build more capital.
You can get growth again by having a better tax structure, lower taxes, invite capital back into this country, get a lot less regulations, and under those conditions, you can have growth again.
It starts with the business sector putting fuel in the engine. In addition to that one thing that you asked me to identify, we must have a maximum tax rate for corporations and individuals of 25%. Take the capital gains tax rate to 0, take the tax on repatriated profits to 0, make them permanent and certainty back into this economy, and I believe we can turn it around.
It's called looking at how the free market system works. It's creating a competitive environment that speaks to growth. We cut taxes historically. We didn't just cut them, we cut them historically. We created the most business-friendly environment in the entire country.
As Speaker of the House, we had divided government. We negotiated with Bill Clinton. He vetoed welfare reform twice. We passed it 3 times. He signed it the 3rd time. Largest entitlement reform of your lifetime. We passed the first tax cut in 16 years. The largest capital gains tax cut in history. Unemployment dropped to 4.2%. How would the country feel today at 4.2% unemployment?
Take the corporate rate and cut it to 0 for manufacturers. You want to create opportunity for businesses and manufacturing to grow, cut that tax to 0, our jobs will come back.
Where's Barack Obama on these issues? You can't find his plans on some of the most pressing financial issues of our country. For example, where's Barack Obama's plan on Social Security reform, Medicare reform? If you can find Barack Obama's specific plan on any of those items, I will come to your house and cook you dinner.
Well, for more on all of this, we're joined by CBS News Director of Elections, Anthony Salvanto. Thanks for being here. So if the candidates' messages are so similar, cut taxes, I think that's the bottom line, how are they going to differentiate themselves from each other?
Well, what you start to see tonight is hammering on the economy. It's clearly going to be a theme throughout the fall. And if you go back to 2008, Republican voters, especially in Iowa, had a number of issues that they cared about. But today, 9 in 10 Republicans, just like most Americans, say the economy is in bad shape. So it's not surprising that you see all the candidates trying to differentiate themselves on what they would do about the economy. Some talking specifically about their records, Pawlenty, Mitt Romney. Others talking about, yes, taxes, but also some back and forth on the debt ceiling, and there were some disagreements there, all looking to differentiate themselves in that space of who would be the best to turn the economy around.
Actually, it reminds me of another campaign where the mantra was, "It's the economy, stupid." Mm-hmm. Yep. I mean, that's it again, right?
Right, very much so. And you know, one thing to remember is that, of course, first they have to win the Republican nomination, and then, of course, go on to the general. So you're talking about appealing to not just Republican voters, but Republicans in Iowa, where 9 in 10, 8 in 10, 9 in 10 are going to call themselves conservatives, and most actually going to call themselves very conservative. So that's the tack that's the space they're competing in.
So last night's debate, of course, is the prelude to the straw poll, or the AIM straw poll. What is the significance of the AIM straw poll?
Well, you know, the word straw poll comes from the idea of throwing some straw up into the air to see which way the wind is blowing. And in a lot of ways, that's what the straw poll tells you. It's not an election, and of course, it's not a formal scientific poll. What it is it's an organizational test. Candidates try to get their activists and their motivated voters to aims in order to cast votes for them. And it gives us a gauge of where the energy is, and oftentimes which candidates have a really good organizing skill there in the state at this point, at this early point, I should say.
Now, does the winner of the straw poll give any indication about who will win the caucus, which is the one that counts early next year?
It can. Interestingly, the straw poll is often a leverage point, if you will, for a candidate who might be a little lesser known or not have as much fundraising nationally, and suddenly they come away with a win. If you look at somebody who's lesser known, like a Tim Pawlenty, he's clearly trying to compete and win in the straw poll. Michelle Bachmann, a lot of people think she might win. She doesn't have the same fundraising as, say, a Mitt Romney. It can really be a springboard. It was certainly when Mike Huckabee 4 years ago did well in it, sort of put him on the map.
So for this weekend straw poll, who has the most to gain, who has the most to lose? Which candidate is really counting on this straw poll to put them front and center?
Well, I think, as I said, Bachmann is. Pawlenty, I think, certainly is. Newt Gingrich clearly would like to do well. Rick Santorum, of course. Ron Paul has a lot of committed folks with him. He did better than expected last time around. Somebody like a Mitt Romney, even a Jon Huntsman, they seem to be putting more of their chips on New Hampshire. And Romney this time isn't putting as much into this straw poll. He did 4 years ago, and, well, it didn't really pay off for him.
He won the straw poll, but then lost the caucus.
Correct.
Now, Rick Perry, the governor of Texas, expected to announce in South Carolina and then be in Iowa, but he's not in the straw poll.
Right. He's coming in, obviously, later than a lot of the other candidates. It's interesting. About 7 in 10 Republican voters nationwide say that they'd like to see more choices among the candidates. And that's kind of the backdrop to Rick Perry. In some national polls, he's tested fairly well. So he's going to come in, and we'll see what kind of an impact he makes. But that's the dynamic there. Interestingly, he's not on the ballot, but there is the possibility of a write-in. And it will be very interesting to watch, where a write-in for Rick Perry, if it emerges, comes out relative to candidates who actually are on the ballot.
Now, but how does that work? Because it's each candidate who is sponsoring the folks who are at the straw poll, right? So any write-in for Perry would have to come out of the hides of somebody who brought their supporters there, right?
Yes, and in fact, that's why if we watch and we see, I'm speculating here, but if we see a Rick Perry write-in do well, better than a candidate who did pay and did try to get their voters to the polls, well, that would be a very positive sign for Rick Perry. At the same time, he's not on the ballot, so write-ins take a lot of effort to pull off.
And we didn't get to this, but we should mention that President Obama is coming into Iowa on Monday, so a lot to keep track of in your neck of the woods.
Yes, there is. Look, down the road in the general election, Iowa has been a battleground state before, and it very well might be again. There's all eyes are on the Republicans here, but if he's looking, down the road, it's worth watching Iowa for that reason too.
Well, thank you for your insight. CBS News Director of Elections, Anthony Salvanto, thanks for being with us on Up to the Minute.